Welcome back. This time, I would like to uh, address something that has been neglected in the media. Much has been said about Trump's tariffs, but not much about the context in which these tariffs, if they happen as Trump has promised, are coming. Recently, Prime Minister Ishiba from Japan making a bid for an Asian version of NATO, said that the United States not coming to the defense of Ukraine because it is not a NATO member is truly frightening. And these are his words. And this reflects something I have mentioned in my video about Ukraine. Declarations like this are particularly concerning, but it would not be that concerning if they were an isolated case. We also have the case of the recent elections in Georgia, where a pro-Putin candidate won the last elections. And the reason was that after seeing what is happening in Ukraine and how unreliable NATO is, Georgians don't want to risk becoming the next Ukraine. And it's pretty understandable. You would decide the same thing if you were in their skin. And just consider how unreliable NATO is when we consider if we remember that in 2023 they pledged 1 million shells, artillery shells, to Ukraine and only delivered 30%. For this year, that percentage is expected to be 50%. And that after more than 2 years of war, they haven't been able to address the issue of standardization of the 155 millimeters shells. They have 14, 15 different kinds of shells, and they are not even compatible. Many of them are not even compatible with each other. So, as I mentioned in that video, NATO's procurement is a joke. You have also, as I mentioned, have to see the attitudes like Biden's or Scholz from Germany. Scholz is the chancellor, that is Germany's Biden. And the same way Scholz procrastinated and still is hesitant about sending the Taurus, these long-range missiles. The same you can say about the ATACMS and the F-16s in the case of Biden. Not to mention the targets in Ukraine, the targets in Russia. It's particularly embarrassing when the Institute for the Study of War had to correct the White House when the White House bold-faced lied about Ukraine being allowed to hit any targets in Russia, only to be corrected by, as I said, the Institute for the Study of War, because the permission was only up to 100 kilometers, not even miles, inside Russian territory. And the ATACMS were not, even the F-39 ATACMS, that are all ATACMS, were not included in that permission. It should not surprise us also when we see that Mongolia, a few months ago, declared that it was not going to honor the ICC, the International Criminal Court warrants against Putin, in a recent visit Putin made to their country. And similarly, countries like Mexico and Hungary have declared that they would not honor those warrants And South Africa has requested the ICC to exempt them from such obligation. This comes on top of the effects of President Biden's Israel policies about the effect of Biden's Israel policy on Muslim countries in ASEAN. This is the first time the USOC Ishak Institute survey has shown that ASEAN prefers China over the United States, and the countries that has tilted the balance have been Muslim countries like Indonesia and Malaysia that are particularly disgusted with the preferential treatment Biden has given to the Netanyahu regime. To this, you have to add the effect of that same policy on Iran, because after Trump undermined Rouhani, the president who signed Obama's nuclear deal, Rouhani, a moderate by Iranian standards, in order to favor Netanyahu, Biden, in a bizarre turn of events, undermined Pezeshkian, the current president, who is also a moderate, putting an end to any hope of reviving the Iran nuclear deal. So this is the context in which Trump's announcement of tariffs come and promises to make it worse, promise to make worse a situation that was already bad. One more factor against the prestige of the United States is that in order to fight inflation, as you know, the Federal Reserve has used the interest rates and quantitative tightening of its portfolio, and that, of course, sent wave after wave of effects on the dollar, appreciating the dollar, and therefore sending wave after wave, forcing wave after wave of devaluation, depreciation of the currencies of especially emerging markets. What forced those emerging markets to also increase their own interest rates, affecting employment, and that which comes after the month of vaccine nationalism that also during the pandemic affected these countries severely, which is reflected in their new levels of poverty and their debt levels. So, given this context, what could we expect of Trump's tariffs? That they will, it's still to be seen how harsh these tariffs are going to be in the end. If he's using them as tool of negotiation in order to reduce immigration flows, or much more difficult the case of fentanyl, because that would imply the Chinese government has a level of control over its organized crime. So, but it would it's still to be seen how harsh these terms are going to be, but whatever the level is, the effect is going to be that it's going to isolate the United States precisely in moments in which a victory over Ukraine is going to elevate Putin to the level of senior partner, and the only way to counter, the only two who are going to be able to counter in some way Putin's influence inside the Chinese sphere are Brazil and India inside the BRICS bloc. So we should be prepared for this isolationism of the United States to be accelerated, that China is going to push forward with much more intensity its Belt&Road initiative. And the Chancay megaport in Peru is just going to be one example. Uh, while the effect of Putin is going to be seen much more strongly in Africa, where he has destabilized some countries in the Sahel, and in the Middle East. Is particularly worrisome that using his influence in Syria, Putin is now recruiting Yemeni soldiers, Houthi soldiers, to fight side by side with North Korea against Ukraine. And it should be no surprise if we consider that RUSI has long ago shown how effective Russia has been in its efforts to destabilize other countries. And what could should give us some hope is that China is not prepared to wage a level of foreign policy, the kind of foreign policy that makes Putin comfortable, which is the kind of foreign policy he has shown in Africa or in Eastern Europe, because they have to fix, at least in the short term, two problems, two very severe problems. China will have to fix at least two of its three more important problems in the very short term, that are its overvalued property sector and its overcapacity for sports. And that could take easily a decade for China to adjust all those losses. So China is not going to be in the mood of starting wars, even proxy wars, unless they have no other choice. One Yet that problem, especially the overcapacity problem, is not going to disappear by itself. And in one case, they could be forced to a drastic devaluation, a drastic depreciation of the yuan, what is called the nuclear option, that is going to unleash a trade war. And in the worst case scenario, as Paul Krugman noticed a few months ago in one of his articles, what he called foreign adventurism, what is a militaristic option. If we cannot keep the machine working with trade, we'll have to keep it moving, rolling with war. And that would be the worst case scenario. What has the Biden administration done to deal with this problem? Nothing. It has made it even worse, because following Jake Sullivan's stupid ideas, he even has sold weapons to Taiwan and the Philippines, who in no war game scenario can stop China by themselves. When he should have tried to deal with China and bring that relation, our relation with China, to one similar we had with Japan. We and Europe had with Japan in the 1980s and 90s. The parts of that big bargain could have been climate, foreign debt, especially the global South debt, and probably even the Arctic. But the myopic Biden administration didn't do that. And by Trump's crony capitalism version of isolationism is going to make these things worse because his threats about tariffs are going to destabilize even more. Remember that the direct effect of tariffs is to appreciate more the dollar. And that means create the same similar effects to the one the Fed had to do, had to inflict on emerging markets when it rose inflation, interest rates to fight inflation. Yes, in this case, it would be to advance Trump's goal of turning America into a chronic capitalism paradise in the image of Orban's Hungary. And that brings us back to the Japanese Prime Minister Ishiba words. The United States cannot be trusted. It's going to be isolated. Europe could be a hope. Unfortunately, I'm not so hopeful. For as long as the Scholz stays in power in Germany, it's going to be very difficult. Remember that he has even made overtures to Putin about energy. And United Kingdom and Germany has severe budget problems. So, unfortunately, a war that could have been won, the Ukraine war has turned into a source of all kind of problems that are paving Trump's path. And having said that, I leave you with our newscast and see you soon.
Good evening. This is Brian Thomas Simons, and these are the main headlines of the hour.
1. DNC Chair Jamie Harrison declared that Trump's landslide victory can be explained because voters, confused, believed they were voting like in Big Brother for the candidate they wanted out, and vowed Kamala, who will be renominated in 2028, will do exactly the same as in 2024 with just one difference. A warning about the voting method to prevent this misunderstanding from happening again. Reassured by these declarations, people willing to represent the Democratic Party in the 2026 elections will a. promise sex conversion surgery for undocumented immigrants, but warn that the vote for Congress is not like in Big Brother. b. change the punishment for shoplifting from time in prison to a reprimand, but warn that the vote for Congress is not like in Big Brother. c. reprimand voters in advance, just in case they don't look enthusiastic about voting for them, but warn that the vote for Congress is not like in Big Brother. d. rally with the most hated politicians from the present and recent past, especially if voters are angry at the status quo, but warn that the vote for Congress is not like in Big Brother. e. say nothing about the issues the voters want to hear and instead tell them you have a Glock, but warn that the vote for Congress is not like in Big Brother. f. get Queen Latifah and Whoopi Goldberg to endorse you and promise to replace the police with social workers and the Boy Scouts, but warn that the vote for Congress is not like in Big Brother. 2. Vice President Harris becomes spokeswoman for Total Wine and More. Democratic candidate Kamala Harris made her first public appearance after her defeat on November 5. It's unfair we lost after raising more than $1.4 billion and getting the endorsement of Queen Latifah, said the vice president with glassy eyes and slurred pronunciation. The good news is that now I am a spokeswoman for Total Wine and More. If you lose an election that you were winning in August, there is nothing better than Total Wine and More to overcome the frustration of the defeat, concluded Harris. 3. In a press conference held yesterday morning, President Trump announced the reasons for picking people without enough background or experience for his foreign policy team. The idea always was to have Marco, Tulsi, Pete, and Huckabee for a special edition of The Apprentice, White House edition. When asked whether this was not dangerous for American interests, the president-elect responded, "I will let Vladdy and Bibi take care of that. I can assure you I didn't sell America cheap. They had to pay a good price. Make America great again. 4. Yesterday morning, the Secret Service announced that President Biden was found in the jungle of Manaus and is in good health according to Ronald L. Rowe Jr., acting director of the Secret Service. In the evening, in an unexpected press conference at the White House's South Lawn, President Biden announced that, after beating Trump and Medicare, he was ready to start his second term and that America can feel reassured that it is in good hands. The conference was abruptly ended by Mr. Rowe and by Biden's Chief of Staff Jeff Zients without providing any explanation.
This has been the news for this hour. Sponsored by Church of the Holy Redeemer's Power in the Spirit. Have you accepted Jesus Christ as your personal Savior? Did you vote for Trump in 2016 and then in 2020? This is the right church for you. If so, Church of the Holy Redeemer's Power in the Spirit is the only Christian church that can promise you in the Lord to have 72 virgins in heaven for only a donation of $50 a month. You will have access to those 72 virgins in heaven. For an additional $25, you will be allowed to replace 10 of them, and for $100, Heaven Premium, you will be allowed to choose them for yourself. Guaranteed, if you're not satisfied with those 72 virgins after you die, full refund of your money. We accept Visa, MasterCard, American Express, and Discover.